What is care all about? An endearing smile, a soothing touch, or perhaps the comforting reassurance of an honest commitment? At Polymed, for years, our commitment to provide the highest quality healthcare to mankind has run deeply through all aspects of our ideology, decisions, and work. Care, concern, and love for humanity. Polymed was established in 1995 and started manufacturing operations in 1997, with a vision of providing the highest quality of healthcare to mankind. Since inception, Polymed has been on an ever-expanding journey of achievements, marking key milestones year after year. Our values of integrity, care, ownership, learning, and inclusivity puts us in a dominant position in the healthcare industry. Polymed as a brand is committed to continually evolve and innovate products that are proven, safe, and sustainable. Our innovations are focused not only on creating value today, but also to prepare healthcare for a better tomorrow. Our varied specialities include infusion therapy, vascular access, dialysis, respiratory care, urology, blood management, oncology, gastroenterology, blood collection system, surgery and wound management, and anesthesia. While our technologies are truly state-of-the-art, our business model is state-of-the-heart.
Polymed is now moving towards its new orbit of bringing more products which are close to clinicians, healthcare practitioners.
Our acquisition of Plan One Health, a leading Italian medical devices company, has further allowed us to expand our horizons, adding focus to in-depth R&D for making highly specialized systems. We are proud to say that today, Polymed is one of the leading manufacturers of infusion products in the world, exporting to an array of over 110 countries. We are Polymed, and we
check. Yeah. Morning to everyone. Namaskar and good greetings of the day, the second day of Arogya Bharat 2023. May I request everyone to kindly take your seats. Please make yourself comfortable. Also requesting you to have your mobile phones on the silent mode or in the meeting mode, please. We're just ringing the bell outside and as people join us as we move into this day 2. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we are also going to be having the presentation of the CSR Awards. That's going to be the third session of the day, wherein joining us is the Honorable Minister of State for Corporate Affairs. He's also the Honorable Minister of State for Planning and Program Implementation and Statistics, Shri Rao Inderjeet Singh Ji, as the chief guest of the awards ceremony. We're also going to be witnessing MOU signing, which is between NATHEALTH and the government of Andhra Pradesh. And post-lunch, we have a session that's a patient safety session. Right now, we are going to be starting with the session on scaling up allied healthcare skilling. So focusing today on the preventive and the wellness sector and towards capacity building in that sector. If you may take your seats, we start. Yesterday, we started with the dialysis, the sessions, technical session, which we started on the dialysis delivery, health financing, leveraging digital. And today, we go into more into the medical education, the patient safety, and the healthcare skilling. So welcome to everyone in the session, Scaling Up Allied Healthcare Skilling. And this session is going to be focusing more on building a robust and a vibrant education and skilling ecosystem, training ecosystem, reflecting on the current state of medical education, the progress which has been made, the key initiatives which have been taken, identifying some of the existing gaps and challenges, what are the opportunities ahead, what are the ideas for revolutionizing medical education. Our distinguished speakers are going to be sharing with us, expanding infrastructure and quality through public-private partnerships, leveraging again the digital solutions to expand reach, invigorating nursing and allied services capabilities, upskilling and reskilling, enabling career progressions, also towards reducing disparity in outcomes in the system, and applying learning from the global systems specifically for India. So these are some of the key growth drivers which we are going to be touching base in our discussions and deliberations. Let me invite the session lead to take center stage, Dr. Ashutosh Raghuvanshi, Senior Vice President, NATHEALTH, and the Managing Director, Fortis Healthcare. We'll have a presentation. May I request you, sir, to please grace the dais. Boston Consulting Group is the knowledge partner for this session. We'll have a presentation by BCG, and I invite Mr. Kshitish Vijayvargiya, the Managing Director and Partner, Boston Consulting Group. The keynote address, joining us will be Mr. Alok Kumar, the Principal Secretary, Medical Education, Government of Uttar Pradesh. He earlier was also with NITI Aayog. We'll also in this session have a panel discussion taking the industry remarks across sectors on allied skilling. And as a speakers, the panelist of the session is going to be moderated by Kshitij. We have the speakers, Mr. Ashish Jain, the Chief Executive Officer, HSSC, Dr. Shubnam Singh, Principal Advisor, Health Policy, CII, and Board Member of the Healthcare Sector Skills Council, Dr. Rajiv Yeravdekar, Dean Faculty of Health Sciences, Symbiosis International, Deemed University, Ms. Nanki Lakhvinder Singh, Chief Executive Officer, ProTribe Senior Care Services Private Limited, and Mr. Prashant Sharma, Managing Director of Charnock Hospital. So they join us as a panelist in the discussion. May I request you all to please be seated on the dais? And would like to request Dr. Ashutosh Raghuvanshi, the Senior Vice President, NATHEALTH, Managing Director, Fortis Healthcare, the session lead, to kindly set the tone and the context of the session.
A very good morning. We had wonderful sessions yesterday, and I hope that today will remain as interesting as it was yesterday. I don't see the hall as full as it was yesterday, but I guess people are trooping in slowly. So to start the day, we have with us Mr. Alok Kumar. Thank you, sir, for being here. And this session is very, very important. When we talk about the human resources in healthcare, sometimes we are too physician focused, and that sort of removes the emphasis on the allied healthcare professionals who actually form the backbone of the delivery. And with this already short number of physicians in the country, it becomes even more important that the gaps are filled by this skilled manpower. A lot of initiatives have been done in last few years, and I think the National Skill Council, the Health Sector Skill Council under Ashish's leadership has done a wonderful job of creating so many vocational courses, so many other allied courses, and preparing their curriculum, giving them a credentialing, etc. And I think that is very important. However, today during this session, we are going to be discussing this in a little greater detail, and we have a wonderful panel here with us. Our knowledge partners have prepared, the BCG has prepared a wonderful presentation, and you would hear that in more details. I think there is a need to engage the private sector more into the this upskilling of the allied healthcare workers, and also providing them career aspiration, career growth, etc., and the career pathways, which will help a lot. There could be good impact of this in terms of employment generation, as well as soft influence of the country in exporting health professionals for the aging population of the entire world. So with this, I would request the session to be taken forward by Mr. Kshitij Vijayvargiya, and I hope that there would be an interesting discussion and a lively discussion.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank NATHEALTH, specifically Shravan, Dr. Raghuvanshi, as well as Siddhartha for picking up this very important topic of allied health skilling. And for Dr. Raghuvanshi to set up the context so nicely. Now, when this came to us, I thought that we understand what allied health professionals stand for very well. It was only when we started digging into the research that we realized the magnitude of the profession and the complexity that it comes with. Honestly, it could have been a very, very interesting question for our RJ Ria to ask during the break. What are we looking at? So, allied health professions, it's a simple term, but behind it, we are looking at 10 distinct categories of professions. Within these 10 distinct categories of professions, we are looking at 55 different professions by themselves. This is a massive spectrum. This ranges from professionals who are more in motor skilling and physical training, like your physiotherapist, your occupational therapist, folks who are more in technical training, like your radiologist and lab science professionals, as well as all the way to some of the more emerging themes like clinical coders on the extreme right. Now, when we move, we try to decipher this complexity, and we'll move a little bit to the numbers. We see that we have done reasonably well over the course of the last 10 odd years. If you look at the numbers of allied health professionals overall, while there is no exact measurement, an estimate say that we have probably grown roughly 3x over the course of the last decade. Now, comparison to some of the more developed economies, it's probably not pertinent. These are the kind of charts that we would come across whenever we are looking at doctors or nurses or any of the other skills. But most estimates say that we have roughly 30 to 40% unfulfilled demand as of now on the allied health professions. This demand, which gets captured right now or get catered to right now by either overtime or by nurses or other professionals actually stepping into the roles that are supposed to be done by allied health professionals. More importantly, if you look at the right-hand side of this slide, you would see that the demand is likely to explode. It's because of our aging population, the penetration of chronic care, chronic ailments, as well as penetration of different kind of diagnostics. We expect that in the next 5 years, our diagnostic penetration is going to become double. All of this together, in terms of demand, we'll probably be looking at an additional demand of 2 to 3 million allied health professionals to cater to the demand that is coming. Now, you would see typically when we see this kind of a demand scenario, either the supply catches up or the wages go up. That's the classic demand supply chart. But when we look at allied professions, actually we are seeing a counter narrative. We are seeing the supply, other than very selective professions like a phlebotomist, is not growing much, roughly 3 to 4% year on year. You would also see that the awareness of some of these professions in the target population or the school kid is actually very low. One of the researches that was done by Economic Times found only 6% of people who are in secondary education were actually aware of the kind of job opportunities available to them under the allied. In parallel, on the right-hand side, you also see that the wages for these professionals are actually quite low, end up hovering within the minimum wage level and not growing significantly. Now, we try to decipher what could be going on behind this, and at best, we could probably define a vicious circle that is playing out. Under various schemes over the last 5 years, whether it is PMKVY or other support that different ministries have offered, we have seen rapid proliferation of the training institutes. Just to give you an illustration, almost 2/3 of the institutes in UP for lab and dialysis technicians came up over the last 5 years. However, they are marred with challenges associated with lack of standardization of curricula, lack of infrastructure, as well as lack of connect with industry to provide them with the kind of training as well as job opportunities. And another survey said almost three-fourths of these are actually below quality expectations. Now, the impact of this on the side of the industry is actually quite logical to understand. While supplies have improved, three-fourths of the industry mentions that it is feasible to now find trained professionals. I'm not saying skilled, but trained professionals. 65% say that the skill is not matching what is required. 23%, that is 1/4, say that there is a huge mismatch in the skill quality that is making available. And that creates the vicious circle faster, right? So you are getting underskilled people, which results into low pay grades. Staffing very often continues to be on third-party payrolls. The focus of management is limited on allied health professionals. It tends to be on doctors and nurses, as Dr. Raghuvanshi mentioned earlier, as well as very often the recognition within the healthcare space. Leave aside the social recognition, but even in the healthcare space is limited. How many of us would actually consider going to a allied health professional like a physiotherapist, even for a simple condition like a back pain? Very often we would actually rush to a doctor. That results to low job satisfaction, and this is a recent survey which is conducted by us. Almost 40, so only 47% of the allied health professionals were satisfied with the job. Almost 30% of them were looking to change their jobs in the next 1 year. 40% of them were actually looking to change their profession altogether in the next 5 years. And only half of them were willing to recommend this job to a friend or a colleague. Right? So that's the vicious circle which loops. We do see that overall interest, we would probably be losing out to many of the gig economy workers which are coming up more recently. Potentially higher salaries. There is much faster gratification. You don't need to go through a 2-year diploma course to be deployed as a Uber driver. And then, lower entry barriers, right? So this is where the circle gets completed, and we are facing the vicious circle that I was talking about. Now, look, the good news is there is a lot of recognition of the fact. There are initiatives which have been taken in the past, but more recently, the National Commission for Allied Health Professionals Act, which has been passed, it's a great start. It's actually a very comprehensive bill. I think we have very robust recommendations in terms of driving standardization, driving quality of the trainers and the teachers who would be staffed, the infrastructure, as well as importantly creating a re-registry for trained professionals so that there is a full record of the level of qualification which we have available. However, executing this is not going to be easy. We would need to make sure that there is a concerted effort between academia, industry, as well as the administration to make this shift happen. We would need to think about the role of technology in driving the standardization of care, as well as how do we create better bridge between industry as well as these training centers to drive employment opportunities. With that, let me pause. I think we have discussed a little bit about the challenges. I would set the stage for the discussion on thinking about what are the potential solutions. And I would ask Dr. Raghuvanshi to introduce the subsequent discussions for us to take forward.
So once again, we very warmly welcome Mr. Alok Kumar. Mr. Alok Kumar is a senior IAS officer working with Government of UP as Principal Secretary, Health and Medical Education. He has a master's degree in public policy with specialization in health from Princeton University, in addition to the BTech in electrical engineering from IIT Delhi. He has over 30 years of experience working in the health sector space, right from the district, provincial, and federal government, including working in the offices of the Chief Minister, as well as at Niti Aayog, the premier think tank of Government of India, chaired by the Prime Minister. He also has worked as a faculty member of the Lal Bahadur Shastri National Academy of Administration, the apex training institution of senior civil servants. He's a thought leader in shaping the policies related to the design of health systems in India and brings a unique combination of experiences, policy making, execution, as well as academic perspective on health sector in the country. I would request Mr. Alok Kumar to say a few words and give the keynote address. Thank you.
Good morning to all of you. Dr. Raghuvanshi, my fellow panelists, Dr. Shabnam Singh, Dr. Rajiv Yarvedekar, Mr. Ashish Jain, Ms. Nanki Singh, Mr. Prashant Sharma, and the moderator of the session, Kshitij Vijayvargiya. All the distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It's a privilege to be here, and I know that you have been thinking about health issues, and NATHEALTH in particular has been thinking about the issues affecting the health system of the country for a long, long time, and I have had a long association with NATHEALTH, beginning with going back almost 6 to 7 years. While I was in Niti Aayog, we had occasion to discuss on various aspects, and I think almost every person in the room, I find more or less in some capacity or the other, we have interacted during the course of the as we take our career paths forward. So currently, I am serving as Principal Secretary Medical Education in Government of UP, and my job is essentially to, and if I look at my primary objective of my existence, it is to produce qualified manpower. And when I say manpower for the health system, and when I say qualified manpower, it means all kinds of manpowers, which includes doctors, definitely, physicians and specialists, but also nurses, also allied health professionals, and also a large number of other professionals, so for instance, pharmaceutical people, then we have a large number of IT professionals now with increasing digitization of health. So there is a whole bunch of professionals required to run the health system. And what one found, at least when I took over charge in the state of UP, maybe it is not, I'm not saying that it represents the whole of India, but I suspect that it could be a generalizable statement, and that the focus is unremittingly only on physicians. It is as if they are some kind of superhuman beings who will not only lead the system, but also do everything that is required of the system. Now, to my mind, that is a problem, because they are trained to do something else, and their time is quite precious. And therefore, a large part of the work which they are performing is now needs to be taken care of by other professionals who unfortunately are not getting adequate voice or adequate adequate role responsibilities, and also possibly matching commensurate salaries in the system. And since we don't give them due recognition, we are at a kind of a suboptimal low-level equilibrium. That because industry gets poorly trained, poorly skilled people, therefore they are unable to trust them, and therefore they are not willing to give them salaries, and therefore aspiring youngsters don't want to come into that profession. So it is kind of as Kshitij was pointing out, it was mostly a low-end equilibrium that has been established. So government of UP realized this about 2.5 years back, and we launched what we brand as called as Mission Niramaya. And Mission Niramaya essentially focuses at producing quality nursing and quality allied health professionals. Now, if I may dare to say so, I think nursing, we have a lot of work, and there's a lot of expertise which is also available, and people have figured out what the solution is. Demand also is fairly stable. Now it just needs to get the act of how do you produce these nurses and get the training systems in right. And we are doing a lot of initiatives. There's very little time, so I would not go into that. But that part of my work is more or less on stream. And I think in the next 1 or 2 years, you will find a drastic difference in the quality of nurses coming out of UP, and it will produce not only for UP, but we hope eventually to produce for the rest of the India and also for the rest of the world, because I believe that this is a profession that will have a lot of traction, and India is possibly the only country which will be able to provide it at the scale. And I keep on telling my colleagues, I mean, there is nothing for me to, I mean, it's more of a gut feeling, but I see that what IT was in 2000, healthcare industry is right there in 2020s. And if we can get our act together, we could really become a source of net supplier of manpower for the health services. But the question is whether we will be able to do it at the scale and with the quality that is needed to do that. Now I come to the topic of the session, which is the allied health professionals. So I found out, and so I am also the regulator for allied health professionals. We have now just notified our state allied healthcare council. We possibly are the first state to do so. But the tragedy is when I'm looking for leadership to chair that institution, I'm finding very little talent that is available. And that really shows you the kind of trouble that we are assessed with when we are trying to, because of the complexity of 59 professions, each of them require a separate focus altogether, but you require this one body to pay. So in the nursing, you have very clear ANM, GNM, BSc, MSc, 4. And people are very clear what the syllabus are, what is to be done, what work is to be done by what level of nurse. But the similar kind of thing is not available on the paramedical side. And the worst part is that we don't even have the intellectual bandwidth or people with sufficient capacities who can help the government do this. So it's really a very big struggle. But this year we are, in some senses, government of UP is focused on getting my paramedical setup right. Now, Kshitij was pointing out to UP example that we have had 2/3 of the paramedical courses just now in UP within 1 year. And that is, the reason is not because we have allowed all kinds of institutions to, to proliferate or to mushroom, but because we have taken a decision that the government medical colleges, which were so far focused on doing only doctors and then specialists and then super specialists, we have taken a decision, government of UP has taken a decision that every government medical college will have a co-located nursing college and a co-located paramedical college. And many of these can start because the hospital is there, the teaching faculty is more or less there, the clinical material is there. So therefore, it could, and I have forced almost every medical college to start those courses, and that is why you see, and hopefully the quality of product from these colleges will be slightly better than what we are, what we are currently in the market, offering in the market. But I face an even bigger problem now, that if I produce the supply, where is the demand? And what I see, I took a survey. I haven't done anything as deep as what BCG has done, but I have done a dipstick survey. So I asked all the OT technicians who have passed out and who are registered with my state medical faculty. We have their telephone numbers. We just called up and find out what is the job that they were doing, what is the salary that they were getting. Most of them were getting salaries below 10,000. Now, 10,000 is something which we pay to a house worker in our homes or a driver, for instance. Now, so therefore, the question that I ask myself is, why would people spend 2 years or 3 years to acquire a diploma or even a degree when what market is offering is not more than 10,000? Only very few, I think less than 5% of the people had salary ranges between 20,000 and 30,000. And we are now going to ask them as to how they could escape this vicious cycle of a low-end equilibrium where the employers fail to provide them recognition or salaries, and salaries is a kind of a very broad proxy for the kind of recognition that you give to those trades and those professionals. So if there is such a big mismatch, where do we start? So why would people from the supply side prepare professionals? And when I talk to my private sector colleagues, I find 50% of these seats going vacant because there are not enough youngsters who are willing to come and take this profession. And the reason both are twofold. One is, if you go and talk to an average family in the village, they don't understand what this paramedics is all about. They understand nurses, they understand doctors. So for instance, for 8,000 MBBS seats in the state of UP, we get 1,80,000 applications. For 10,000 nursing seats, we get not more than 21,000 applications. And in paramedical seats, out of 10,000, we struggle to fill 5,000 of them. So this is the kind of demand side problem from the, so where is the channel? So if I have to create a pipeline of, I need to attract smart youngsters into this profession first. So they should opt, because if they don't read, if they don't study that, they will never be available in the workforce. Then the second part is, how do you train them? Third part is, how do you certify them? It is merely everybody gets a degree. What is the amount of skills that that individual possesses? That certification is missing. So we have to solve the problem of certification. So how do you get credible certification? So I keep on thinking back to my IT example. So think about how IT fueled the growth of professionals. You had a body called NASCOM, and you are kind of an equivalent analogous of that. They created a set of certifications. AppTech had, some O-level, A-level, advanced levels. Then you had a Microsoft certified systems engineer, and so on and so forth. There was the Cisco certified network engineers, which was largely recognized by the industry and rewarded such. The only crucial difference between, we have no such, clout with NatHealth. I'm sorry to say that, but that is the reality, because you don't constitute more than about 5% of the overall health system of the place. Government constitutes about 30%. Government has a very set recruitment procedures, and we pay the paramedics reasonably well. I think we could do a little bit more in terms of their promotional opportunities, but by and large, but the government recruitments are very few and far between, and therefore the youth today who opt for paramedical don't really feel comfortable or don't really feel assured that at least I have a reasonable chance of getting a government job. And government also as a whole constitutes 30% of the health system. So there is a large amorphous mass of small providers which are actually the major employers, and there is no platform which is gathering all of them together as a whole, as an industry collective. The other crucial difference is that IT, you had 4 or 5 big firms, whereas we are very distributed. The other major issue was that you had a foreign client who was demanding quality and also paying for it. Here, that is also again a problem, although with coming of Ayushman Bharat and gradual penetration of insurance, I think more and more hospitals are now pushing towards, they are being asked to do NABH, NABL accreditations, and there the demand for this professionals, allied healthcare professionals start building up. But the movement has yet to catch a degree of strength that would fuel an explosive growth in this area. And therefore, the challenge really is, there is a supply side problem, but I think from my experience of the changes that I could bring in the nursing sector, I say that with a great degree of confidence that I can solve the supply side problem. But unless there is a corresponding demand side push or pull, I don't want to lead the youngsters astray and say that I will promise you a good job at the end of the 2 years or 3 years hard work that you put in, only to let him down. So that is my biggest worry in terms of fueling the supply side reforms. I am doing that, but the larger problem is, unless there is this platform collects all the potential employers and impresses upon the idea of some kind of self-policing or self-regulation. Or else the other option is that the government really forces the Clinical Establishments Act down the throats of providers, and that also meets with a lot of resistance. So in sum, what I can say is, in my own judgment, the demand side problem is a bigger problem than a supply side problem. Supply side problem can be addressed, and that I think we can address in a couple of years if we get our act right. But until we address the demand side problems, so even if, so here is what I feel, and these are all kind of loud thinking musings, because nobody really has worked this through, and unfortunately it hasn't received as much attention. Even with the formation of the National Allied Health Professional Council Commission, we haven't seen great movement. What should be the curriculum? So we have curriculums which were designed way back, and we have seen no improvement on those curriculums. Who will design the curriculums? Who will teach them? What are the competency standards that should be required? So for a radiographer, for instance, or for a radiotherapist, or for a physiotherapist, who will certify those competencies? So you had this whole APTEC, the NIITs, and huge amount of thing in the private sector, who could do all these certifications, which was recognized by the industry. But we have no such equivalent thing on the health side. And lastly, unless we get independent certifications, which is the body which will do these independent certifications? Can we have every medical college which has a certification center, which will then be accepted by all employers? And this could also be, in some kind of partnerships with potential employers as well, because each of the employers spends a lot of time in terms of identifying who those good allied health professionals which they should employ, or who those good nurses which they should employ. So I think it's a kind of a common public good kind of a thing, and I think the government of UP is ready to offer a platform that, if some of you could be interested in setting up a certification center in, say, one of the colleges, it could run as a business activity. It need not, because once those certificates carry value in the market, people will be willing to pay. And the last part of this whole problem is that, please recognize that we have a large number of people with degrees in the market, degrees/diplomas, but with no commensurate skills. So there is a vast market potential in terms of upskilling these potentials. So there is a lot of problem of certification, etc., which Ashish kept on pointing, and when we were discussing this at the Niti Aayog, we found that people want a degree because at least I'm talking of UP perspective, any person aspires to have a government job. अभी तो वहाँ की status यही है. तो वो सोचता है कि अगर हम इनके सर्टिफिकेशन लेके जाएंगे तो प्राइवेट में तो मिल जाएगा, बट आई विल बी फॉर एवर नॉन एलिजिबल फॉर अ गवर्नमेंट जॉब, बिकॉज गवर्नमेंट में मिनिमम क्वालिफिकेशन डिप्लोमा है, तो उसको डिप्लोमा चाहिए भाई. कम से कम उसको एक माइंड में ये रहेगा कि हाँ एलिजिबल होंगे, कंपटीशन में मैं नहीं आ पाया कोई बात नहीं, बट एटलीस्ट एलिजिबिलिटी रहनी चाहिए. सो दैट इज द प्रॉब्लम विद देयर सर्टिफिकेशंस. बट अगर हम रीस्किल करें, जिनके पास डिग्री तो है, डिप्लोमा है उसके पास, सो ही इज नॉट वरीड, एटलीस्ट ही इज एलिजिबल, बट उसके पास प्रॉब्लम है ना, उसके पास उतना नॉलेज है ना उसका स्किल है. अभी मैं आपको बताऊं, वी वेंट टू रिक्रूट नर्सेज, 4,500 नर्सेज फॉर द स्टेट ऑफ यूपी. 24 करोड़ की आबादी, 1 लाख नर्सेज अप्लाइड, वी कुड सेलेक्ट ओनली 3,000. So when I asked the Public Service Commission guys, what is the problem? They say that, look, we have some minimum benchmarks, and this is only knowledge benchmark. I'm not even skill testing to hoti nahi hai. So we have a vast mass of people who have degrees but have no commensurate skills. So there is a huge market opportunity in terms of training these people. इसमें कोई हमारा zero risk है. Certification और regulatory problems zero है. It's like a coaching class. आपको कोई रेगुलेटरी स्टैंड एक्सेप्ट फॉर द फैक्ट कि वो सर्टिफिकेशन किस तरह का हो, एंड दैट सर्टिफिकेशन इज एक्सेप्टेड इन द मार्केट. सो आई थिंक देयर इज अ ह्यूज अपॉर्चुनिटी देयर, एंड आई थिंक what we should do is कि, और एक और बात जो यहाँ की रियलिटी है कि अभी इसमें हायर मिडिल इनकम ग्रुप्स के बच्चे नहीं आते, वैसी फैमिली से नहीं आते, इसमें लार्जली इट इज कन्फाइंड टू लोअर सोशो इकोनॉमिक ग्रुप, सो दे विल नॉट बी एबल टू अफोर्ड very high fee structures. Unlike, let's say, IT professionals, because unless there are salaries down the line that can support this kind of a fee structure, we'll not have very high. So we have high volumes, but low margin games here. So how do you get high volume, low margin games? How can we sustain a model which will be like this? And my broad take is that if the government provides the hospital infrastructure, the clinical load or the clinical material which is required for training, partly capital grants for equipments, etc. And the operational model should be that you bring the faculty and you teach the kids and you recover the operational expenses through fees. But even if that doesn't work out, I think the government is open to even subsidizing a part of the operational expenses. And I think we are now in the process of developing the policy. My Ernst & Young is my consultant, and they are doing, and they will be reaching out sooner or later to people like you. And in the next 2 to 3 months, my idea is that we should freeze a policy. And we have multiple paramedical colleges, beautiful buildings which have been made up, but we are not able to utilize them as efficiently as one would. And all of these are attached to one medical college or the other. So you have got everything put together. So a lot of other expenses that hiring buildings, attaching to hospitals and so on and so forth, all those things are taken care of. Hostels, residential facilities for those kids, everything is there. Even housing for the faculty members, even that is there. So all you need to really think of is bring your equipments, even that could be partly subsidized, bring your faculty, but most importantly, bring a certification mechanism which is accepted by employers outside, because I don't want kids to come out and have beyond their degrees an additional certificate which has exactly the same value as the degree which they are carrying. So that is where we need to get out of. I think I have spoken enough, but I think there's a lot of work to be done here, and I hope that there is some model which should be coming out of the UP in the next 3 to 6 months. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Alok, sir, for sharing these insights. They were actually they were the right balance between thinking strategically as well as going deep into many of the challenges that you have articulated. With that, let me start the panel conversation as well, and invite Dr. Rajiv to respond to the first question. I think there was a lot of conversation around how should we think about credible certification, how should we think about curriculum design, competency standards, etc. That Alokji spoke about. My question to you, sir, is how can the academia play a more prominent role in addressing these challenges? Please, sir.
First of all, thanks for that question, Kshitij. First of all, I would like to say that Alokji gave a very nice landscape review. And this landscape review becomes very important from the response I frame as an academician, representative of a university, the Symbiosis International University, but talking more of as an academic. The landscape is important to understand because that's where you understand the weaknesses of the system. For example, the word paramedic is simply not defined in the Constitution. Second thing, it took a good 30, 40, 50 years for us to realize that allied healthcare space is something different. We have to change and increase an aspirational value amongst our potential students, clients who are going to be the service providers. We should not be calling them technicians. And here's where in the audience, my colleague Dr. Samita sits and she says that as director of the allied healthcare program, she would like to call them as technologists. And we'd like to make the differentiation between the technicians of yesteryears and the technologists of today. Just to put in place the fact that this allied healthcare space is not organized, it is not unorganized, it is disorganized. And it's academia which can, the first role is to get all of them together. When I say get all of them together, I mean all the stakeholders. And when I say stakeholder, it is beyond academia to include the industry, the regulators, the accreditors, Ashish is here, and so many other industry representatives who constitute this august audience. But from an academic standpoint of view, what we need to get together is a uniformity. Starts right from who is eligible for enrolling in this program. What is going to be the course or the program content? A simple differentiation which we often forget is course is not synonymous with program. It is the program which is an amalgamation and a sigma of courses. We need to understand which course is taught in which semester. What is the title that is going to be awarded to the candidate on successful completion. And in sync with the national educational policy of 2020, we need to have entry level, exit level, and an important concept which Shabnam has been trying to project at all fora is the recognition of prior learning. There's so many technologists who have been in the industry for good number of years, and we need not put them to the rigmarole of basic training. Then comes the credits. We need to understand that every program has to be credited. And when we talk about credit, it is a component of didactic lectures versus the component of experiential learning. And it's here where the industry needs to contribute. We need to understand what the industry requirements are. Why does the academia not collaborate and cooperate with the industry, try to understand what the industry requirements are? And here I must quote that way back in 2015, 2016, we collaborated with Dr. Mahajan, and we have tried to understand what the industry requirements are. And he told us, Rajiv, this is what you need to have, your skill sets and competencies. So at the end of the 3-year program, and now the 4-year undergraduate program, as envisioned in the NEP, we need not go with a begging bowl to Harsh and says, Harsh ji, mere bacche ko place karo. It's he who raises a requirement for me to manpower, to have the skilled trained manpower, which Alok ji was saying about the nurses, that unfortunately in the last 2 years, we've had COVID trained manpower. And these people simply don't have the skill sets and the competencies and the desired ability to integrate and work as a team. And allied healthcare professionals, like in any other profession in the healthcare sector, has to be a team approach. So can we train our individuals? And then again, going back to the NEP, have these value-added courses and so many other allied skill sets imparted and ingrained within the training program to raise a wholesome cadre. And finally, coming to the last response, ultimately, this has to be contributing to bridging the skill gap. So we have to benchmark the programs so that Ashish is happy, accrediting it and benchmarking the program. Second thing is we have to meet the industry requirements so that the recruiters who are going to actually offer them the pay package, which is ultimately going to raise the brand value or the TRP and the acceptability and thereby the respect for the profession. But most importantly, how do we reach to rural India? And that's here where Shabnam comes in, where she will be talking about technology enabled in education to reach out through various technology platforms, reaching the unreached. So this is the role of academia in short.
Thank you, Dr. Rajiv. And that actually is a very good segue for me to direct my next question to Dr. Shabnam. Dr. Shabnam, Rajiv spoke about a little bit around how can technology play a role, or how can newer. So we are looking at a world which is fully connected. Most of the people now are digital. There are smartphones, access to internet. Alok ji had mentioned earlier about a couple of problems. One was around standardization. The second one was around demand side consolidation and connecting the training centers along with the industry. What are your views on how can technology play a more prominent role in driving this?
Thank you, Kshitij and Ashutosh, Mr. Alok Kumar and Rajiv for giving me many places to intervene and show you and share with you some thoughts as to how technology comes into this piece. So, use of technology, one has to be extremely sure of two very important points. What is the intent of using this technology? And the second very important point is, how do you exercise moderation in the use of technology? Let us not forget, and I go back to Soumya's point yesterday of equality and equity, there is a huge division in the country all over, not only India, globally, of the access to technology. So these two things must be kept in mind when you press in technology. Now, how is it that you can use technology? I'll go back to a point which Alokji very rightly pointed out. How do you enthuse the learner to get into this field, right? 15 years of walking this mile with the foundation of HSSC and the reality when we were rolling out Max Healthcare, that you could find the doctors and nurses, but you could not find a single technician with the right credentials, right? In this case, the learner comes through a network. It does not come through any college, to the point which Alokji mentioned. It comes through a network which you belong to. And here is where technology comes in to fore. You look at the pillars in which technology has evolved in the learning space. And I'll just refer to my notes for you all. When you look at technology in a learning environment, to Rajiv's point, you look at it from a perspective of the learner and the teacher. Dono taraf se hota hai. So from the learner's perspective, what does it do? It instills, and this was amply demonstrated in COVID, it brings to fore group work, connectivity and networking, because you're working in groups. You can't physically move, but you're connecting all over the world. How do you get people to know who you are, what you are? So this is an extremely critical point of using technology, which we forget, this network which is created. Then is artificial intelligence for course delivery. Now, what does this mean for a learner? When you join a course, there must be some benchmark as to what I know, to your point. How do you know I need to know X, Y, Z more than A, B, C, D, right? Vikram is sitting here when he started his dialysis program and he came to us for Uzbekistan. So until you don't assess the person, how do you know what the person actually needs and needs to grow on? Technology comes to help you to make and pace those pieces. Then is, as I said, an extremely important point, social networking. And how does the social networking come? To Alokji's point, that when you have interdisciplinary, and that is doctors, nurses, and technologists work together, you produce that platform for mutual respect, as well as what you can use to leverage to grow, to be able to address the patient perspective. Now you come to the second part from the teacher's perspective. A teacher is defined by the knowledge that they have and how they can apply the knowledge to transmit it to the student. Now, unless there is an upskilling of the teacher has no way of being able to know the impact that they're having, because he's learned XYZ and it stays there. So this is an area, again, where the network of teachers can be enthused. I remember many years ago, 2011 to be precise, in Himachal, when we started the GDA program in schools. The schools didn't have principals. It was the nurse educators who were doing the GDA training who doubled up and became principals. So they had to learn management skills. It's just an off example of how people move, which then tells me that how do you enthuse the learner with technology? Today, every child, all the studies that have come out have said that the learner is far more familiar than the teacher with the digital world. Far more familiar. So if you know your learner is from the digital world, what stops us, and I'll end with my last point after this, what stops us from taking children who have trained in the digital world? Yesterday, today, as well as the Innovation Lab shows the power of the digital world in healthcare. So if you take students who have tasks, training, which if they don't use in medicine, they can use in another industry. Let us not forget that for every learner, 25% of your human capital value comes from your skills on the job. That comes with your first job. 33% come with your second job. 47% come with your third job. And lastly, I'd like to share with you, because I can go on how you can use this. Yesteryears, you needed 10,000 hours of skill training to be a master. 10,000 hours translates into 7 years of learning. Do any of you think that we have 7 years? We don't even have 3 months. Today's statistics say every 3 months you need to learn a new skill. Every 11 months you're going to change a job. So let us to enthuse the learner, to get the kind of people into the system, leverage technology, bring them from a background where they are already trained in digital skills, then convert them through digital technology into OT technicians, etc. So there is an enthusiasm to join this sector. Back to you, Kshitij.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shabnam, for those insights. Let me now come to Ashish. I think, Ashish, we have spoken about curriculum design, role of academia, role of technology. How do many of these things fit in the context of the regulatory guidelines that have now been set up, especially as you think about the course design as well as skilling? Over to you, Ashish.
Thank you, Kshitij. I think there's a lot of discussion around standardization, curriculum design, technology. And before I go to that, I just quickly wanted to, I think, respond to some of the things which Alokji has referred in his keynote address. Alokji, to your information, I think we've already started this reskill and upskill, and we are jointly doing it with industry only, where we are doing this certification, which is widely accepted by industry, because we are customizing it as per the requirement of the industry only. So there's a wide acceptance of the certification, at least within the industry as well. So that we have already started that, initiated that process, what you are saying, and probably I think we'll have a discussion on this, how we can take it to the government as well, and how we can work together on this. So that is all. I think we are on the same page with what you're saying. Second point about on the independent certification as well, I think we have enough room in the people today. We have Dr. Raghuvanshi sitting next to me. I think where certification are done through HSSC for these reskilling, upskilling, and even skilling programs are being accepted widely, and I think it will help. So the moment government also comes forward to say that this is being accepted, as you rightly pointed out, sir, that today also I think the first and the foremost preference is ek sarkari naukri chahiye. So probably if that backing also comes from the government as well for these independent certification in some kind of recognition for these as well will help in terms of establishing that independent certification, making it more useful for the entire ecosystem. Coming to the the curriculum and standardization part, I think we have heard a lot of things about standardization, curriculum design, but that's already there exists. Like Alokji mentioned, we have this bill, which is the Allied Health, which will actually do the standardization of all the allied health professional bills, which professions which are there for curriculum for them. That's the job of the commission, which that they will do, and which is already happening in some way. But before that, even I think standardization happened, which was happened through the Ministry of Health and us working together in standardizing various allied health profession. We had worked with various stakeholders, including academia. Rajiv is sitting here. We have taken the inputs from academia, industry as well. So that standardization already exists, but I think we don't need to beat standardization also to the extent that it becomes counterproductive for us. So we need some flexibility along with standardization as well, which suits the employer. Like I think Alokji referred initially in his remarks, supply side is there, but where is demand side? The moment we want to look at demand side, we need to have that flexibility into standardization also, which will mean that every employer would have their own requirements, own needs, which mean there has to be flexibility in terms of customizing the requirement of the program as per the employer. And that's what the ecosystem is already existing for that, which can be done either through a reskill and upskill for those people. I think Rajiv spoke about credits also. So we have a new national credit framework which has come in place now, which will make the skills credit equivalent to all the credits into the the formal education ecosystem also. So there's a mobility from the vocational to the formal and vice versa as well happen. So there's enough standardization which is already existing, but if there is requirement, I think that can always be done with stakeholder consultations. That is there. We have been working along with various demand side, industry partners which have the demand for people. And I saw, Kshitij, what you show, that over the next decade, you have already forecasted the requirement of 2 to 3 million people, which in a case show there is a lot of demand which is going to be there for this allied health. And I also wanted to allude to one more point. In addition to allied health, there are a lot many other professions, what we call them as skilled healthcare professionals, which will be required, which may not be the allied health, but I think large number of people would be required in that area as well, where I think we need to think of what we are thinking of allied health today. Probably we had to work on that as well. And the social respect for such profession is very, very important, which I keep on saying, and which is, I think Dr. Raghuvanshi also mentioned, when we spoke about healthcare, we only be very centric to physician or a doctor or nurse, which Alokji also spoke about. So I think we need to, broaden the scope of doctors, nurses, allied health, skilled health professionals, because this is an entire team. And I can say from personal experience, at least in the healthcare fraternity, what we see, there's already recognition of this fact, and there's a lot of respect for the allied health profession, the skilled health professional. Simple example is, if a surgeon is going into an OT, they would require a specific technician for themselves. They'll say, मेरे को ये technician चाहिए जब मैं OT में हूँ. Why? This is because that's the respect for a team member, what they're looking for. And that is already growing. Only thing is, how do you bring it to the social front? पेरेंट्स को कैसे पता लगे कि हाँ डॉक्टर नर्सेज के अलावा भी कोई और प्रोफेशन होता है हेल्थ केयर में. सो दैट्स समथिंग सोशल अवेयरनेस हैज टू बी क्रिएटेड, बट विद इन द हेल्थ केयर इकोसिस्टम आई थिंक वी हैव इनफ अवेयरनेस नाउ दैट ऑल प्ले अ इक्वल रोल एंड प्ले एन इंपॉर्टेंट रोल विदाउट विच the hospital cannot function, and that's why there is so much focus, and that's why we are seeing a lot of traction now from the healthcare providers in terms of reskilling and upskilling of all the healthcare professionals. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashish. Maybe now let me move over to the industry side as well. We spoke about demand, we spoke about social respect, we spoke about recognition, compensation. Let me direct my question to Prashant. Prashant, what are some of the learnings from some of the other industries that we can leverage towards bringing some of these elements back to healthcare?
Thanks, Kshitij. It was, so let me draw a comparison between 2 or 3 different sectors. One is tourism, healthcare, and IT. As we all know, healthcare is quite new to the country. We started at about mid-80s, late 80s, and most of the private activities started in the 90s. It spread up in the current last 2 decades. As a healthcare sector-wise, we are about 10 billion, and we employ close to about 6 million people countrywide. Tourism started in the 1940s with the first private airline, first private hotels coming online. And they currently deploy about 80 million people, and the industry size is close to 170 billion. I'll come to the stats of the IT sector, started in the 90s and mid-90s, deploys 5 million people, industry size is 235 billion. Now, if you look at the sector of tourism versus healthcare, we find that the HR practices in tourism is far more evolved, industry to industry comparison basis. The plug and play is very simple. For example, for a person in the tourism sector, it's very easy to be plugged out from one sector, from one company, and be deployed into a different company. If Lalit was to operate a hotel in Nagaland, they would easily get their housekeeping people, their room services people, and the other people, plug them out, plug them into Nagaland, they would do the same job. If Marriott was to deploy somebody from Hyatt, just a bit of cultural orientation has to be done, but the same person coming out can do the same job in a different company. In healthcare, we are more people-driven. We are not process-driven. This is what inhibits us. We depend a lot on the person's individual capacity rather than the process which is set in place. I say this for the general industry, not for the Maxes and the Apollos and the top players. As an industry, because we are quite of new, so we have not been able to develop this expertise and this kind of evolution of human resource management, which tourism has done in a fantastic way. Now, we can credit this to the age, but then again, let's compare it to the IT sector, which came in the 90s, is 25 times the healthcare size and deploys almost as many people as the healthcare sector.
Now, IT developed their backend very strongly. IT also is a HR-oriented business, it's skills-oriented business, and it developed its backend processes of engineers, technicians, and others very fast. The industry caught on very fast, started producing quality manpower. Based on that, we were able to do. Now, Mr. Kumar said that we are probably trying to be what in healthcare, what we were in IT earlier. To do that, we really need to speed up our game, and we need to get learnings from across sectors and really push the pedal very hard on this. One of the things that probably other industries offer, which healthcare doesn't do, and some of the speakers reflected upon that, is one is the placements. Healthcare does face challenges, but also it faces challenges in terms of progression. When a hotel management graduate comes and joins as a bellboy, he knows that in 8 years' time, he will be a front office manager, and in 12 years' time, he will be a GM. So this career progression is very fast. We can't say the same thing about our technicians. We can't say the same thing about our healthcare professionals. Part one. Part two, we must understand that formal healthcare is only 30%. Informal healthcare is the balance 70%. Whereas specialists are there in the formal organized sector, in mainly the metropolitan cities, a huge variety of manpower is deployed in the secondary care space, which is in the not so the tier 1 cities, or maybe some in those, but mostly in the non-metro cities. Now there is always a choice between a specialist and a generalist. In a large 400-bed hospital, there will be many ECG operators, there will be many sonography operators, but in a small hospital, in a rural area, there will be only one ECG placement, maybe only a few sonology placements. There, they are using mostly the generalists. They are not using specialists. So whereas on one hand, we have to focus on creating the special skilled people, we also have to develop a genre for generally skilled people, a multi-skilled health worker who can do multiple roles. If needed, can act as a radiology technician. If needed, can be diverted to other diagnostic technician like maybe ECG, or even operate in other clinical areas. So this generalist role, which is now being fulfilled by unskilled and mostly lesser educated people, if we can formalize this sector, we would do a great service to the healthcare industry as a whole.
Thank you, Prashant. You brought down a very important part around the complexity that the allied health professions have. I think let us now hear from Ms. Nanki on how, you are running a space around the geriatric care. How would you think all of these conversations fitting in the context of your business, Ms. Nanki?
Actually, I think allied healthcare workers form the core of geriatric care. Very interestingly and ironically so, India is going to have 330 million seniors by 2050. 20% of the population will be seniors. Out of that, maybe 20% require acute care. So your healthcare trained professionals are about 20%, are taking care of 20% of that number. The rest of it will have to be taken care of by allied healthcare workers. Within that, again, and it is really ironic, within that also, 60% of that allied healthcare worker population doesn't even have proper nomenclature as yet. Some people call them GDAs, your general duty attendants. Others call them caregivers. Others call them just attendants, right? This is the core of what will really take care of your senior citizens in the future. And we are not ready for this. We are not trained for this. We don't even have, like I said, the right nomenclature for it as yet. These are the people who will actually add dignity to old age. If you talk about COVID and home care and how it's taken on, who are the real people who made this difference? It was these people who went out there into people's homes. Acute care is a very small part of the overall home care system and the senior care system. In fact, the overall healthcare system as such as well. It is these people who go out there, they add dignity to your life, they have self-respect to the seniors. These people become so core to a family and to a senior citizen because they are so close to them. They take care of all their needs. And yet they are not even trained. We don't even know if they come from, if they have a police record or not at times. We know nothing about them. I can go on and on about the problems that we face around here, but the truth is, if we are able to get these people the right kind of credentials and the right kind of training, I think a lot of industry level problems will get solved, starting from financing the elder care industry to insurance in the industry to the payment capacity to really what these people get paid, and not that 10-15,000 rupees. They will actually be shown a career path. Can an attendant get a fast track course into a nursing school? Can a therapist, who is another subacute allied care player, get a fast track entry into physiatry? These are questions to be answered. And Alokji, I am really happy to see your enthusiasm and very excited by the enthusiasm that you bring to the allied care sector. I can tell you, as a part of the senior care segment, supply is the issue here, demand is not the issue, because these people are core. If you are able to get us the right people out, whether that's Ashish or it's any other institute, a government institution, we are going to be able to get these people out there and make a difference to people's lives. And that's what, and that's why allied healthcare workers are very, very close to at least our business. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nanki. That brings us to the end of the panel conversation. I would like to extend my very warm thank you for all the panelists for sharing their thoughts and for the active participation. I think, I would probably not be able to do full justice to the breadth of conversations that we have had here. But just to summarize some of the notes that I was able to take, there was a lot of conversation around how do we fundamentally make the curriculum stronger in terms of acceptability with the private sector, as well as relevance for the various different professions that are there. We also spoke about the bridge programs to upskill the existing professionals, because there is a large force which is available out there who would benefit a lot from shorter programs and upskilling. There was impetus around how should you think about training the trainers, making sure that they are able to impart the right education and are up to speed on what is developing. One of the things that Ashish, you spoke about is differentiated requirements of some of the providers themselves in terms of acceptance. So how do we create some sort of tiered certification of form to be able to cater to these differentiated requirements? Then we spoke about the generalist role that Prashant, you mentioned about, potentially a very interesting theme, especially for some of the smaller centers or rural centers. And then most importantly, how do we think about financing in the context of the low fee situation that we would probably be looking at? Of course, technology has to play a very, very important role. We spoke about technology's role in driving standardization. How can you imbibe technology both for trainers as well as for the trainees? How can we connect different facilities in a manner that is conducive to their learning, as well as leveraging technology for social awareness and bringing demand in different areas? We also spoke about the role that the industry needs to play actively around making sure that placements are integrated. Potentially, if we have a registry already in place, figuring out a way to be able to connect this registry with the demand portals of various organizations, so that we are able to drive a match between demand and supply, as well as how do we enhance the workplace experience of these allied health professionals, leveraging understanding and learnings from many of the other industries. That was a brief summary on the pointers that we discussed. I would like to thank the panelists once again, and thank you very much, Alokji, and for all the participants. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Kshitij, and thank you to Alokji. We close this session. We'll close with a group photograph, and also apprising the August gathering and our distinguished speakers that on behalf of them, NATHEALTH is going to be planting 50 trees. These trees are going to be planted at AIMS, Deoghar, Jharkhand. That's a commitment towards the environment, which comes from every member of NATHEALTH.